Joining me now to talk about it and give her insights, very well versed in these such matters, is Liz Peek. Now, if you don't know Liz, you can read Liz by going to her website, lizpeek.com. You can follow her on Twitter at Liz Peek. You can also read her on Fox News. Now, Liz Peek was one of the youngest investment bankers in history as a female, youngest female investment bankers, and made her name on Wall Street. And she's very well versed in finance. So I'm anxious to get her take now that we actually have something on the table. It's moving through the Senate. Joining us now to give an honest rundown, because she's an honest broker of the truth, Liz Peek. Liz, good to have you.
Thank you very much. Happy to join you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Now, I'm not even shy about my enthusiasm for the Trump tax plan. What say you?
I share your enthusiasm, even though I'm going to get clobbered by it because I live in a high-tax state, and it's pretty clear that the deduction for state and local taxes is going to be de minimis. So for people like myself in New York or people in California who are paying 12, 13% state and local taxes, that is a heavy hit. But I don't care, and I think the reason that all of us should be enthusiastic about this tax bill is that it really does it really creates an environment in which multinational corporations and businesses of all sizes, domestic businesses, will feel encouraged to invest in the United States. And I think, John, there are a couple of things here that are worth talking about. One is that Democrats, and I really have looked at this pretty intensely, they really don't believe, I think, that the United States is competitive. And I think that's sort of a sad commentary. I really go at this from the point of view that there are many reasons why the U.S. is a preferable, not just an equivalent, but a preferable place to invest, whether it's a rule of law or a well-trained workforce or the fact that we have cheap energy forever, et cetera. There are a lot of things that are very attractive about the United States. And I think Democrats kind of, that whole secular stagnation narrative that they have been promoting for several years of the sort of tepid Obama recovery period, I don't think they really believe our economy can sustain a good rate of growth. And I totally dismiss that. And by that way of background, I would tell you I think this is the next step and the sort of only missing step to getting back to 3% plus growth on a sustained basis. And I think this tax bill will do it.
I just had Senator Mark Warner on at the 8 o'clock hour, and he's voting no, and he gave me some of his reasons. But one thing that I'm trying to straighten out here is the Democrats are very good at messaging. And,
yes.
They got two messages in this thing. Number one is it's a tax cut for the rich, millionaires and billionaires. A total lie, not true. Millionaires are going to pay more because the loopholes go away. Now, it is a tax cut if you die. Okay, and so there's not an estate tax, so you're no longer taxed if you're dead. Okay, I'm for that. I'm just for that. Like, when I die, I don't want to be taxed. I just want to die.
Something to look forward to, John.
Right. I just want to die, and I don't want to pay any tax. I got to deal with St. Peter. And by the way, I'm going to bring Joe Morrissey with me to negotiate my entrance into heaven because he's the best lawyer out there. I can't possibly do it by myself, so he's coming. But look, I don't want to pay taxes when I die. But other than that, the other thing that they're saying is, this is going to hammer the middle class. This is not a tax cut. Liz, we have run for 3 days here. My wife, Ann, who's a finance guru, she has run numbers on a multitude of different incomes in a multitude of different family situations. No children, one child, 2, 3, 216, 117, etc. Up to about $150,000. If you live in Virginia, deductions, no deductions. And in almost every scenario that we come up with, if you're earning $165,000 or less, you are going to get a tax cut. Yeah. Except if you're in New York, California, and New Jersey, and you're paying 13.5% local and state taxes. Other than that, your taxes are going to go down. So the Democrats are just lying.
They are lying. And in fact, even the Washington Post, as you know, called out Chuck Schumer for doing just that, for lying about how it wasn't going to benefit the middle class. It clearly will directly lower taxes for middle-class Americans. But the real message of this program, the tax bill, is that it will enhance job prospects for the middle class and wages. I mean, for all those voters who were disgruntled by the fact that they hadn't had a wage increase in 10 years under Barack Obama, this is the remedy. People don't understand that what has been suppressing wage growth is, number one, not full employment, and now we're getting closer to that, but number two, a lack of business investment, which leads to undeniably higher productivity, which leads to undeniably higher wages. That has been the missing element of our economic recovery since 2007. And that is what this bill is designed to remedy. If you get more businesses spending money on plant and equipment and adding new jobs, then wages are going to go up. There's no question about that. So you have to say to yourself, how can Democrats really be opposed to that? And the answer is only if they don't believe the United States is a competitive country. And I think, really, people should be challenging the Democrats on this. John, you and I share an absolute revulsion to the GOP inability to craft a message. And I must say, in looking at the last several days of tussling over the tax bill, in fact, I'm writing about that this morning. The fact that you have Corker, who is presumed to be a deficit hawk, by the way, who routinely votes for what I view as the worst bills in American legislative history, which are the farm bills. Anyway, they're squabbling over whether or not we'll get much, whether revenues might not come through as expected, and the deficit will increase. So they want to have this automatic trigger put in place, which is a terrible idea from every possible perspective. But what it really reflects, again, is their underlying negativity about our economy. And, I don't see how any Republican can really share that. I think it's a profound lack of understanding. And Bob Corker is a businessman, so he really should get. In fact, if you go back and look at his campaign stuff, he does get how high taxes have been hurting businesses, both small and large. So I think this is all sort of self-promotional myself. I'm a little skeptical about Congress in general, and to have them all sort of preening around, demanding this and demanding that, it's their 15 minutes of fame. But the truth is, there's not much real economics behind it.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. I'm with Liz Peek. She is a financial writer at The Hill. You can also follow her on Twitter at Liz Peek and go to her website where all of her articles are, which is LizPeek, LizPeek.com, here on the John Fredericks Radio Network. So, Liz, I just want you to repeat what you just said, because you're the first person I've heard say this, and I think it's a riveting statement. So what you're saying is the Republicans who don't think we're going to get growth with all these tax cuts, and the Democrats who are voting no, saying it's going to raise the deficit, which is laughable in and of itself for obvious reasons. What you're saying is they don't believe that the United States can be competitive, right?
Yes, and by the way, that's a view that I think has sort of been subtly and persistently infiltrated into our nation's psyche, excuse the psychobabble, over the last decade. I think you've had so many people say, well, 1%, 1.5% growth is about the best we can do because of this and that and the other thing, because we have an aging society and because of this and that. It isn't true, John. And again, in fact, I gave a speech on this the other night to the Manhattan's Republican Club, and I think people were kind of like, wow, it's true. We have so much going for us that other countries don't have. I mean, when you look at Europe, you have all these unbelievable entanglements. The reason Macron was elected in France is because their labor laws are completely impossible. Do you want to invest in Russia? No. Do you want to invest in China, where business CEOs get kidnapped on a regular basis? I mean, it's ridiculous. The United States has the best, in fact, all kinds of global corporate CEO surveys have been done showing that where do those people want to invest? They want to invest in the United States. The only people that don't know it turns out to be Republican congressmen who don't really get the picture. But it is true. And the only thing, I literally think maybe one or two other, that maybe this is wrong, but I was going to say the only thing holding us back is that we have this absurdly high corporate tax rate. And, you know, that's what we're trying to change here. So, I don't know. I find it really kind of disheartening that there's so many skeptics out there. But, look, I you know, if you want to put in an automatic trigger, fine, because I don't think it's going to come into play unless you have, you know, some natural disaster or a terror attack that causes a hiccup in our economy. And then what do you want to do, raise taxes in the midst of that? It would be complete insanity. So everything about it is stupid. But, you know, that's kind of how legislation often gets made, as you well know, better than I do.
It is really stupid. And so that's even that whole thing that you're saying about the trigger is part of the sunset rule that the Democrats have globbed onto, and their messaging is that, well, the corporate tax cut for the rich shareholders, that's permanent, but this tax cut from Trump, that's going to go away. And look, it isn't going to go away because it's going to work. And secondly, as I was telling one of our callers earlier, in order for it to go away, you would have to be in Congress, up for re-election, and you would have to essentially vote for now, which would be the biggest tax increase in history. So You're getting the biggest tax decrease in 100 years. You would have to, in 5 years, vote then for the biggest tax increase in another 100 years. Not going to happen. This thing is not going to sunset no more than the George Bush tax cut sunsetted, because nobody wants to get tabbed with raising taxes to that degree. So that is not going to happen. Now, this is the other thing on the debt that's driving me up a wall. I want you to clarify it. So, according to the CBO, the debt would raise $1.1 trillion if everything stayed the same, static, over a 10-year period. That's 1 point, whatever the number is, divided by 10 billion over, but 1.1 trillion over a 10-year period. On the other hand, the CBO says, well, for every 0.1% that the economy, that GDP goes up, you're going to get an increase of revenue, right? They say, of about, $10 billion.
Yeah.
Right? So if the economy goes from 3% to 4%, which I think it would under this plan, the debt would actually go down. And that's what the CBO says. So what are they talking about?
Well, again, I think they're just sort of parroting concerns raised by Democrats. I really find it pretty amazing after, 8 years of Republicans winning innumerable state houses across the country, legislative seats, etc., they still don't believe in their own program. That, I think, is actually a fair statement. So they look at those numbers, and they don't really believe them. We've had, to your point, talking about the middle-class tax cut, we have had bipartisan or nonpartisan tax groups say, yes, it is a tax cut for the middle class. So other than Paul Ryan, who is unfortunately not a great message carrier because he's too intellectual to kind of, make it simple and pithy, where is that? Where is that message to voters? The American public is rating this tax bill pretty poorly at the moment because the Republicans fail to make a case. And
bingo.
You can make the case, I can make the case, Paul Ryan in his sort of ineffectual way can make the case, but the truth is they're not all singing from the same hymnal, and you've got all these people, again, who I think are sort of self-interested, wandering around talking about, it might bump up the deficit, we have to make sure it doesn't, things like that, because they don't get the basic message. And if they're not talking the basic message, how can Americans hear it? And they're not.
You're right. That's why the Democrats are winning the argument, because what they're saying is, you're going to lose your exemptions. You're going to lose your deductions. You're going to lose, you can't itemize. I mean, we've run all the numbers, Liz. Right?
Yes.
So I got to
No, I'm sure you have. And good for you, by the way, for doing that.
Thank you. And actually, I have to give a shout out. It's all my wife, Ann. She did the whole thing.
We believe that.
Yes, she heard me on the radio Monday, and a bunch of people were calling in upset about different things. And she said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to spend 2 days, and I'm going to run every number from $30,000 up and do a comparison. So I just had a caller, Liz, 35 minutes ago. I think his name was Kenny from Richmond, who said, I'm very nervous about this because I'm going to get hurt because I'm a single guy. I make $70,000. I deduct my state taxes. I deduct my mortgage, and I'm going to lose. And I said, okay, let's say you make $70,000. You are going to save $695. Your taxes go down. He said, well, that's not what everybody's saying. I don't care what everybody's saying. I've got the spreadsheet here. Your taxes are going to go down by $62 a month. It's right here. I mean, that's what they're not saying. They haven't done they're not telling people that, boom, your taxes are going to go down under just about every scenario, except if you live in New York and California and you have a humongous mortgage and you're making, $180,000 to $700,000. Then you're likely to see an increase. Other than that, it's going down. And that is not the middle class, by the way. I mean, you might consider it upper middle class, but, somebody making $350,000 with $1 million home is not right now in America considered to be middle class. I'm sorry. This tax cut was
John,
not designed
I think
for
we
that.
can agree that the Democrats are completely terrified that this is going to happen.
Yes.
They're terrified that the Republicans are going to get this thing passed, which eliminates one of their great kind of catch-all criticisms of Donald Trump, which you see repeated over and over again, that he hasn't, quote, hasn't gotten anything done, which, by the way, is not true. But in terms of big legislative accomplishments, yes, it is true. This is the big legislative accomplishment that basically is the granddaddy of those things and will basically expunge that line of criticism. Democrats don't want to see it happen because of that and because it will work. It already is working. Companies are already making bets based on the idea, on their conviction that this is going to happen. They're beginning to line up investments. Investment dollars are beginning to increase, et cetera. The Democrats, this is a line in the sand, because one thing that is amazing to me, you haven't seen written about anywhere, is what comes next. Okay, everyone's focused on the spending bill and then this and that and the government shutdown and all the drama. What comes in 2018? I'll tell you, a big push for infrastructure. What could be most important in terms of GOP maintaining the House in 2018? A push for infrastructure. And that is when the Democrats' resistance, their complete denial of working with the Republican Party is going to really cost them, because Americans from A to Z want to see infrastructure spending go up. We all have problems with airports and highways and ports and all the rest. We know it has to happen, and everyone has campaigned on it. No one has actually followed through on it. That is what happens in 2018, and it's incredibly exciting.
I tell you what, you're spot on with that, Liz Peek. I want to thank you for your time today, and I agree with you 100%. We've been saying this all week. The Democrats are petrified that this is going to go through and the economy is going to explode at 4.1%. And it's all about power, because if that happens, they're not going to seize power. They want power. In order to have power, the economy has to tank. If it grows, they're dead. That's their issue. Has nothing to do with itemization or corporate taxes or anything else. Has everything to do with power. They smell blood in the water. They don't want anything to change that. That's why they're opposed to this so adamantly. Liz, thanks for being with us. You can follow Liz Peek at LizPeek.com, at Liz Peek on Twitter, LizPeek.com, or read Around the Hill. Liz, thank you for being with us today.